These are the last two verses, and even though we read these last week, and we're not going to do a whole lot with them today. We're going to kind of throw some bits and stuff in, and hopefully we'll be able to take care of, or at least finish chapter 9. And if we have too much time left, we'll go ahead and start chapter 10. At least with the introduction, and for some reason I'm trying today. All right. Okay. Let's do the scripture. And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off. Now we dealt with that. We showed you the graph. We showed you the calculation. We showed you the sign. But not for himself. And the people of the prince. This is something I get into today. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. And the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. And he shall confirm, talking about this prince that of the people that's going to destroy the sanctuary. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week he shall cause the sanctuary and the oblations to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation. And that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. All right, we showed a demonstration of the cycles. We showed the 390, the 490-year cycles and all of that. So we won't even go back there. But it has to do with how God has a timetable. How many of you believe God's got a timetable? How many of you believe that God is working accurately with that timetable? Yes. How many of you are looking for the Lord to come back?
Amen.
Today. You know, October the 3rd is Rosh Hashanah, which is also the Jewish New Year. You know what year it is in the way the Jewish keep their year? 777. I don't know if that means anything, but when I was thinking about it, 777, that's God's number for perfection, you know. And there's 3 of them, which is the number for the Trinity, you know. So, isn't that kind of interesting? 777. Of course, the year is 5,777, you know. So, October the 3rd. And you know how I've talked about Rosh Hashanah possibly being in God's timetable, possibly being the time the Lord will come for the church. So kind of exciting to me. I don't know how you feel about it, but yes, sir.
I don't know if it means anything really or not, but I was thinking the other day, the scripture refers to us having, 310 years, which is 70 years. And if we add 70 years to 1948 when Israel became a nation, we're approaching that 70 years from there. And it says that this generation will not pass away until we see the Lord come. So maybe yes, maybe no, I don't know.
And here's another thing. Think about it. 1917, Allenby walked into Jerusalem and took Jerusalem from Ottoman Empire. Right. He walked in. 1917. 1967, the Jewish nation took the Temple Mount and East Jerusalem back, in the 6-Day War, 1967. That's 50 years. That's a battle year. Right. All right. Add 50 years to 1967. What have you got? 2017. Woo-hoo. I mean, it's just, does it mean anything? I have no idea, except that, it's just kind of exciting to think about when you look at history, and I told you that the Jews look at patterns. When they look at the Word of God, they look at patterns. And so if you look at patterns, you know, it gets kind of exciting. Anybody else got anything to say? It's time to shout. That's what she told me to do. Just point her to tell her this time to shout. So I'm speaking in the auditorium every once in a while. I'm going to stop and say, you know, say, Juanita, it's time to shout.
Now listen, I said if you had a slump or something and you needed some encouragement.
Oh, okay. Well, you may have to shout the whole service. All right. Anyway, just a little history here. All right. After the destruction of the city and the temple by Rome in 70 AD, the city and the territory was renamed by Hadrian to erase all memory of any Jewish people there. Have you ever wondered, isn't there got to be something supernatural about the hatred of the Jews?
Yeah.
There is. I don't know of any other nation, any other people on the face of the earth that have been so hated, you know. But Hadrian, he names it to it. Alia Capitolina. And in 70 AD, when Titus took Jerusalem, there was over 1 million Jews that were killed by the army, as recorded by Josephus. Jews were then dispersed throughout the empire and throughout the world. In 135 AD, there was 580,000 Jews that were killed by the armies under Hadrian at the rebellion of Mark Octopus that took place in 134. A lot of Jews have died over the years in masses, you know. And then, of course, Christianity, under all of those first years from Acts, from the beginning of Acts, and all of the original apostles had died off, the church just flourished, even though there was a lot of persecution going on. Yeah. So persecution doesn't cause the church to minimize. It seems to cause it always to increase.
That's right.
You know,
Yeah.
when the pressure comes. Yeah. And anyway, in the 4th century, that the conversion of Constantine, which has its pros and cons, you know, Rome officially became a Christian empire. You know, declared to be you're going to be a Christian. By doing so, what happened was, in order to get everybody to join the ranks, they modified Christianity to incorporate some of the things that were pagan. And so that's why we ended up in Christianity with a lot of things that are pagan. There were 2 capitals after that, after Constantine declared the nation to be a Christian empire, a Christian nation. Let me say this about Christian nation. That's just a title. Doesn't necessarily determine or declare the actuality of what this nation is. You know, we say we're a Christian nation. We got our foundation on it, but we've gone a long ways from where our foundation was. There were 2 capitals. One was Rome in the west and Byzantium in the east. And then in 610 AD, in the deserts of Arabia, in the city of Mecca, a new religion emerged. That's Islam. And Islam came to be the only true faith and a successor to Christianity and Judaism. So we're we're the final faith, the final religion. And Muhammad Abdullah claimed to have traveled to Jerusalem on a night journey. And from the top of Mount Moriah, he supposedly ascended into heaven on a winged animal. Y'all know what that animal's name was? Burroughs. It was Burroughs, and it was not a horse and not a donkey. It was something between a horse and a donkey.
That's it.
Raymond, go on, get out of here.
I think it's a mule then.
Yeah, it'd be a mule, because you'd have a
That
cross
fits
between.
the name.
Y'all, that just slipped out. I didn't. But the animal was named Barak. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, and they say, and they even claim that they're in the foundation stone there, in the mosque in the Dome of the Rock, where the foundation stone is. The Muslims even claim there are footprints there of where the horse launched off into heaven. Anyway, and up in heaven, when he was up there, God gave him all the requirements for the Islamic faith, supposedly, the five. In fact, I think God asked him to pray every hour for 35 different hours, and I think Muhammad had to say, but there's only 24 hours in a day. And so he had to remind God that you can't pray 35 hours when there's only 24 in a day. You know. Anyway, ended up, they settled on 5. I don't remember all the story about it, but they ended up settling on 5 hours in a day that they're supposed to pray, and some other requirements and all of that. But in 634, 2 years after the death, now if you remember, it was in 610 that Islam become a religion in Mecca. You know, I mean, finally Muhammad got established, and so in 610 the most Islamic faiths got kicked off. Well, he died in 32. So that's only 22 years after he didn't live a real long time after he got this thing started, you know. But anyway, 2 years after he died, the armies of Islam, they defeated the Byzantines, which was the name of the Western, the Eastern Empire of the Roman. So, yeah, this becomes a little important here in a little bit, in light of the scriptures that were read. On Mount Moriah, they built the Dome of the Rock to commemorate Muhammad's night journey, and also to demonstrate that Islam was the final religion. We often refer to it as Mosque of Omar, but it's not a mosque. There is a mosque on the Temple Mount, but it's not the Dome of the Rock. Al-Aqsa is the name of the mosque that is there. Except for a short time, the Crusaders ruled the Temple Mount. Other than that, after the Byzantines fell to Islam, it's been under Islamic rule. And I think the Crusaders, they controlled Jerusalem for about 90 years. That's all. You know, other than that, it was under Islamic rule. This all began to change in World War I when the Ottoman Empire lost to the Allies. And actually, that's when Allen walked into Jerusalem. There's some that say he rode into Jerusalem, but that's not correct. He walked into Jerusalem. He refused to ride his animal into Jerusalem as a conqueror because of his faith in God. He got off of his animal, made all of his men get off, and they walked into Jerusalem. They began to change the. Then, of course, the empire was divided up, and Britain became the protectorate of all of that. In the beginning, Britain had promised to establish a Jewish state if they defeated the Ottoman Empire, but after defeating them in 1917, they didn't keep the promise. Then in World War II, half of the Jewish population was destroyed in the Holocaust. Do you know how many Jewish people there are today, totally in the world? How much? 7 billion. There's about 7 million about 7 million in Israel, but there's only about 20 million altogether. A little over 20 million Jewish people in the world. It's kind of like thinking of why would all of those countries and 1.3 billion Muslims, why would they have so much hatred for a handful of people that number somewhere around 20? I mean, throughout the world, there's between 5 and 7 million that are in Israel. That's all there. Anyway, all right. Anyway, get back there. Then, of course, after 1917, the Jewish people began to. There wasn't already in the land. There were few in the land, but in 1917, under the Jewish protectorate, the Jews began to try and go back to Jerusalem. Some were successful, and some weren't. A big story in that, but and then of course the Arab nations, they waged war when Israel became a nation. The Arab nations, they waged war on the new Jewish state, and they lost. That was 1948. And Jerusalem became what they called an international city. It was divided up. West Jerusalem belonged to the Jews. East Jerusalem, where the Temple Mount, was controlled by the Arabs. And then in 1967, that Six-Day War, Israel defeated Jordan and Egypt and recovered East Jerusalem and the Temple Mount. In my opinion, they should have never let Jordan maintain control of the Temple Mount. They should have, but that's neither here nor there. The sovereign Israel again controlled the Temple Mount after the 1967 war. First time since 63 BC when they had control of it. The Roman general Pompey, he took control of it in 63, and they controlled it after that. Now Gabriel tells Daniel that a 7-year agreement is going to be made by this prince of the people that destroyed the temple. And what we're referring to is the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. But this agreement is being made. Gabriel tells Daniel that it's going to be broken. This agreement that is being made is going to allow the temple to be rebuilt and sacrifices to start over again. Not everybody believes that there's going to be a new temple built there on that site. Most of us, though, I'm talking to me, I'm included in the bunch that does believe there's going to be a temple built. All right. Now he says, Bring that verse back up. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Now the question is, who were the people that destroyed the city and the sanctuary? That's the big question. Well, we know it was Rome, right? We know it was Rome under General Titus that destroyed the temple. Or do we? We know it was Rome. We know Rome was the ones that ruled, right? And we know it was Titus's army. Here's the thing, here's the question comes. Remember I said that under Constantine, he divided the nation that had two capitals. He had one that was east, that was all the way from Istanbul, all the way east. That was the Eastern Empire. And then Rome, and then some of North Africa was the Western Empire. And we know that the Western Empire, it fell 1,000 years before the Eastern Empire did. The one that was capital was Istanbul. So the big question now, can we firmly say, and this is something I'm just injecting, okay? You can weigh it, look at it, think about it, throw it out, whatever you want to do with it, but it's just something as a possibility. It was the Roman army, but the Roman army had 4 legions. Let me see if I can remember. There was the 5th legion, the 12th legion, the 10th and the 15th. If I got it right. The one I'm interested in is the 10th legion. The 10th legion of the Roman army was made up of Syrians. Now, what this verse says, the people of the prince that shall come and destroy the city and the sanctuary, and actually, Titus didn't want to destroy the sanctuary. That was not in his plan. I mean, he was disturbed when it happened after the 10th legion, which had camped on the Mount of Olives, right across from the Temple Mount. That's where they'd camped. I think it was the 15th legion had camped north of them and north of the temple on the Scopus. But anyway, it was the 10th legion that when they attacked Jerusalem, that destroyed the Temple Mount. They burnt the temple, they scraped up the gold that had melted, and all of that. Here's my thought. When it says and I know that a lot of times you can make almost anything you want to make out of something, but when it says here, the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, could it be telling me that the prince is coming from those people that destroyed the sanctuary, which would include Syria, Turkey, and part of Iraq, possibility. When the Bible talks about the Assyrian coming into the land and God confronting the Assyrian, could he be talking about this prince here? When I was in Palmyra, I read a little book there that told me that the Queen of Palmyra had dispatched during the Titus's attack on Jerusalem in 70 AD, that she had dispatched 1,000 Camel Corps soldiers to this event. Now what part of what legion they were, I don't know, but that's what it says. So I mean, if it's saying the people rather than the nation, or it's saying the people could it be insinuating that maybe this man of sin, this guy that's might be coming from the very part of the world that we're hearing all of this about today? You know, it's the thought. Rebuilding the temple is a growing movement in Israel. I don't know whether y'all realize that or not.
Yes.
But I just read an article the other day where the House of David is suing because they're laying claim to the Temple Mount because they're saying they have a document, which is the Bible, where it says that David bought that piece of property. Yeah. You know. All kinds of things are going on. I mean, they have not literally. I know there was a news article that's saying that they had appointed a high priest. They hadn't, but then it had a correction. They hadn't really appointed a high priest, but the Sanhedrin in Jerusalem has endorsed a certain guy for a position of high priest. You know, you got. But anyway, you know, it's a growing religious movement pointing to. They're looking for the return of Messiah too. They're looking for him. Now they got the Orthodox. They got a different view of his coming. I mean, we know he'd come one time. We're looking for him to come the second time. They're looking for him to come the first time. You know. But anyway, they're looking for his return, and they're getting tired of the Muslims having control of the Temple Mount. I mean, Muslims won't let them pray on the Temple Mount. They won't let anybody pray on the Temple Mount. When we went on Temple Mount, remember, they said, no praying. But we were Christians, you know. No praying. Nobody but the Muslims. Yeah. Well, they're getting fed up with it, you know. So they'd like to see that all change. And they're wanting to establish a spiritual and a cultural life. Their identity as Israel, with Jerusalem as capital, and the Temple Mount as a place of worship for the Jews. You know, with the structure there. Gabriel tells Daniel in the midst of this agreement, this 3.5 years, that this prince to come, he breaks this agreement. Stops those sacrifices after the temple is built, and then it works toward the end of all of these things. You know, at the end of the next 3.5 years, the 1260 days, at the end of it, the Lord will appear. After that, there will be a judgment. You know. Okay. This Dome of the Rock, that's the third most holy site in Islam. Why, I don't know. The only thing that the Quran never mentions Jerusalem. The only thing it mentions is there is the furthest mosque. Makes a reference to the furthest mosque. And they have taken that to mean Jerusalem. And that's the end. Not the end of time, not the end of the world, but that's the end of chapter 9. Any questions or comments? Yes. No.
And this doesn't pertain to what we're doing. We're still going to have prayer for the prayer team in Pastor Dill's office, even though he's not here. Pray for the service, and we're going to meet right after you're through.
Anybody else got anything to say? Any comments to make? Any corrections? Y'all can, hey, if I know y'all may not know this, but I'm not perfect, so sometimes I make mistakes. You're not gonna point out my mistakes.
No, I was just gonna tell you a comment. Sister Billy Graham was called to go to Israel, and she has been able to be a witness for Jesus and the Lord over there in Israel among the Jewish people. She was talking to some high official one time. I can't remember who it was, and probably wouldn't know the name if I did, but anyway, they were talking about Jesus' first coming and his resurrection and all of that. And he just kind of smiled at him. He said, well, when he comes this time, we'll ask him, is this your first visit? So I thought that was real sweet. He didn't reject anything he was saying. He said, we'll just ask him, is this your first time to earth? You know? So I thought, because they do believe he's coming.
Yeah, they do.
We believe it's the second time, but they believe the first time. They do believe he's coming.
And they're training the priests, they're showing them how to slay an animal and prepare it for a sacrifice. They've even got the agenda together to train the high priest. Because one of the first things when you get a new temple, one of the first things gonna have to be done is it's going to have to be cleansed. The temple has to be cleansed. So there's a, and we talked about the red heifer here a while back, and all of that. So, hey, it looks like, the point being, it looks like things are shaping up in this world for the Lord to come back.
Yes.
Not anything to keep him from coming back to the church. Not a thing. Now, we've had those in our congregation that believed in a mid-trib and a post-trib. I'm a pre-trib. I don't think there's anything that keeps the Lord from coming first. If you're mid-trib and they start building their temple, you can pretty well start counting off the years. They start offering sacrifices on the Temple Mount. You say 3.5 years if you're mid-trib. 3.5 years, Jesus is going to be here. Or if you're post-trib, 7 years, he's going to be here. But see, with the believers, he could come anytime.
Yes.
The believers in post-trib,
Brother Raymond, I do have a scripture here.
Okay?
Who does Jerusalem belong to? And this really thrills me because it's over here when he's talking about swearing. He said, do not swear at all, neither by heaven, for it is God's throne, nor by the earth, for it is his footstool, nor by Jerusalem, for it's the city of the great king.
Yeah, right.
So it belongs to him.
Right.
See, I got a witness right there on your phone.
There you go.
Did he say it was his?
Said it's coming. No. That's like, you talk about that. God said he's put his name on Jerusalem. He said in the Word of God. And you've heard me talk about the letter Shin, the 22nd letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Looks like kind of like a W in a way. But if you look, the way the valleys are laid out in Jerusalem, the Kidron Valley comes down, the Sun Hinnom comes, the valley comes down, and then the Tyropian comes down, and they form the letter Shin. If you were to take the letter Shin like and hold it like this, and then turn it and slap it down on Israel, it forms the letter Shin, which is on the Manusa that they hang on their doors. They put the letter Shin on there because it is the first letter of Shaddai, El Shaddai. And that represents God. So he put his name there. All right, everybody. God bless you.